Okay, so we're really honored today to have three great individuals to talk to you this afternoon about rethinking energy, the innovations that will lead us into the future. So first up, well, not actually first up, but we have Diane Grunich. Diane is an internationally recognized energy expert and served as a commissioner for the California Public Utilities Commission from 2005 through 2010. Next we have Shannon Casey. Oh, let me just say Diane is currently a researcher working with Stanford University, and she's been, they've come up with some very interesting research analysis, and that's what she's going to be sharing with us partly today. Next, we have Shannon Casey, who's the Communications Director with Clean Tech San Diego. Shannon manages and coordinates overall corporate communications, strategic marketing, public relations activity to raise the viability and visibility and profile of Clean Tech San Diego and its members. Next, we have Bob Raymer as the CBIA, the California Building Industry Association Senior Engineer and Technical Director. Bob represents California home builders at the local, state, and national level on such code-related issues as energy efficiency, green building design, disabled accessibility, fire safety, and indoor air quality. And in his spare time, he has a life. But we were talking today, it may not have much of a life until a week or so from now. So without any further ado, we're going to start off with Bob, and he's going to talk to us about kind of what CBIA sees for our future.
Want to go ahead and do it up here?
Up here is fine.
All right. Thank you, Joseph, and thank you for inviting me here today. I'll just be making some brief comments on our move towards residential zero net energy, sort of the energy efficiency standards, the point of diminishing returns that we're sort of heading into, energy management systems, plug load, and regarding solar. So with that, we could probably take 10 to 12 hours, but I've got about 10 minutes, so I'll jump right into it. The fact is the CEC has done a heck of a job over the last 35 years. The last three updates of their energy efficiency standards have been historically large. The 2010 standards brought us a 20% increase in stringency. The 2013 regs that we're in right now brought another 25%, and the standards that were adopted last week, which I was hoping Andrew McAllister was going to dwell into, brought about another 28% increase in stringency. To give you some perspective here, back in the 80s and 90s, and yes, I was around way back then on this, doing this, and the fact of the matter is, the upgrades by the Energy Commission back in those days was about 4 to 5% every 3 years. And so effectively you could say California for the last 7 to 8 years is energy efficiency on steroids. And understanding the codes at the national level and what the individual states have been doing, we've left them in the dust. And when 2017 rolls around, that's going to be done in a big way. Now why this, as you can imagine with all of this tightness in the last few years, we're beginning to hit diminishing returns. It's getting a lot harder to get that next little increment of energy at the same cost. And the fact is, looking forward, we always do analysis on what's going to be for reach codes at the local level. How do we get that 15 or 20 or 30% beyond? And the fact is, the cost is going up, providing we just limit ourselves to the same things we've been updating in years past. And in terms of diminishing returns, that really came home in a hard way with this most recent update of the standards. The fact here is, of the various things the CEC adopted for residential, in addition to some lighting changes and the water heating standards, we have two big things going on, and the standards are going to kick in 2017. Number one, we're going to be moving to high performance attics. Number two, we're going to be doing advanced wall systems. Both of these measures represent a major change in common construction design. CEC is moving industry away from the standard 2x4 wall construction that we've been using for the past 70 years. Dates all the way back to the beginning of World War II. We're moving into a thicker wall cavity using 2x6 and 2x8 construction. And while this allows insulation, this quite frankly, represents a major change in the way we've been doing things. And you've got to keep in mind of the tens of thousands of designers, building officials, site superintendents, contractors, subcontractors, and the fact that our framing crews, about half of California's framing crew, do not speak English as a primary language. And so we've got thousands and thousands of individuals that need to effectively change in a rather significant way what they've been doing for many years. Now, in addition to the advanced wall systems, we'll also be doing high-performance attics. Now, right now, the home you're living with probably has a good amount of insulation above the ceiling. Well, for the first time, the high-performance attic is going to bring insulation that's attached directly to the roofing assembly. Effectively, you're going to have some insulation either on the top of the roof that's covered by another slab of plywood, or you're going to have insulation under the roof that's attached to the joist. And that'll probably be the common way. We'll probably be doing boxed or spray foam insulation on the underside of the roofing assembly. But once again, why are we doing this? We need to get the temperature of the attic down because we've gone to high density construction in recent years. All of our air conditioners are being put in the attic. And the fact here is, during the summer months, that attic gets up to about 140 degrees. And so with every air conditioner, you've got ducts that are coming out of the air conditioner with nice cool air in it. And so what's the first thing we do? We put it in an ambient temperature of 140 degrees, which from an efficiency standpoint, not smart. And so what we've got to do is we've either got to get the duct systems in conditioned area, or the easier way to go about doing this is to put that insulation on the underside of the roof. Now, we're still going to have insulation on top of the ceiling, but we're going to bring that temperature in the attic down at least, well, the CEC says we're going to bring it down 60 degrees in the summer. I'd be happy if we can get it down 45 to 50 degrees. So with that very efficient system that's going in, and since this represents a huge change in design practice, the CEC, the PUC, all of the IOUs are pooling together with industry to get all of this training and education and pilot programs done now prior to January of 2017. This is a great example of a public-private partnership. Moving on to energy management systems and plug load. Given the success of the CEC standards, the home's energy load, which is regulated, has dropped to about 40% of the total energy load used by the house. That's a good thing for the regulated load. It's a bad thing for the unregulated load. Right now it means this unregulated plug load, you know, the appliances, your refrigerator, your washing machine, and all the things that you plug into the socket, you know, your computer terminals, everything else, that now represents about 60 to 65% of the home's total energy load. So, this presents a number of challenges as we move towards Z&E. In the simplest terms, we need to significantly reduce the plug load. Why? You know, in a business sense, we need to get the plug load down in order to be able to get the size of the PV system we need on the roof, to get that size down. Right now, it looks like we're going to need 6 to 7 kilowatts of PV. We get the plug load down, we can get by with 4.5 to 5.5. That saves money, it saves space. Two greatest opportunities here come from the smarter, more efficient appliances. Obviously, Energy Star. There's some problem with putting that into our state regulations. Obviously, we run into problems with federal preemption, but there are clever ways to do this where you don't trigger federal preemption issues. Number one, you can put together a package of voluntary features or options, compliance options, that the builders can have access to, effectively having the owners sign an assurance that if they don't have it already installed, that they will install a super efficient appliance. That is one way to really start kicking in. The other way is a massive application of smart energy management technology, smartphones, etc. But along with this, we've got to remember, if the occupants don't understand how to use the technology, what's the point? And we ran into that in a big way 20 years ago with the programmable thermostats. We had very smart thermostat technology going into the dwellings, going to be very efficient, and 1 out of 10 homeowners knew how to use it. And so that's very problematic. We have to make sure that that doesn't happen. Heading into 2020 and the last update of the energy standards prior to the Z&E goal, CBIA and the CEC will be exploring ways to deal with this. And lastly, regarding solar, To get most of the PV system on the roof, to get the most out of the PV system that we get onto the roof, we're going to need to use that power for peak load reduction. Unfortunately, that's at the 4 to 7 p.m. time. The fact of the matter is we're getting a high amount of solar at around the 11 to 2 o'clock time. This means the installation of battery storage. One of the things we're going to have to do, get the cost of the storage devices down. And number two, even though these storage devices that are on the market now don't present a fire safety issue, we need to think in advance, and we need to make sure the fire service is comfortable with this technology. Many times industry has forgot to bring the fire service along. The guy in the great suit with the Dalmatian next to him, if he has the heebie-jeebies over something he's not familiar with, he can stop construction. They have that capability. It just makes a lot of sense to bring them into the loop and kind of shepherd this along. Now, in addition, this brings up another problem and a possible solution. Over the past 15 years, single-family home construction has been going vertical. We've been through AB 32 and SB 375. We've been doing a lot of single-family development that is high density. Basically, the homes are separated by 6 feet, maybe as much as 10 feet, but still, given old ranch-style suburban sprawl, nothing like what we're doing today. The problem here is that by going vertical, you need to understand about 80% of the homes we're building today are 2 or 3 story. We're not doing the old style single family, single story ranch style dwelling. So industry needs access to every inch of space that's on that roof. This raises a variety of design constraints for Z&E. The fact being that most of the single-family homes will not have enough room for that 6 to 7 kilowatts of PV on the roof. One of the reasons for this, right now, the state fire marshal's regulations that were developed probably 7 to 8 years ago require that we have 3 feet of clear space along the roof. If you've got a PV system, you need to have 3 feet of space on each side of the roof leading up to the ridge. So that's 6 feet of area right there that's clear space. Once you get to the ridge, you've got another 18 inches to 36 inches of clear space. And why do we have this? In case the home becomes fully involved with flame, the firefighter can't go in through the wall or through the window, so they actually get up onto the roof and pickaxe in to the burning building. An exciting way to make a living. I probably wouldn't want to be doing that. But here's the problem. These regs were put into play before California adopted a mandatory residential fire sprinkler ordinance. All new single-family homes starting in January of 2011 are required to have indoor fire sprinkler systems. If you got a new home, you've got one in it. Here's the problem. The way the sprinkler systems work, they trigger, they're heat activated, so 1 or 2 sprinklers will go off in the room where the fire starts. Consequently, you never get a major conflagration of flame taking over the entire structure on the inside. So the question can be raised now, why do we need all of this old clear space on the roof of new homes that have sprinkler systems in it? That's something that Local Government Commission, Calabo, the League of Cities can certainly help us work with, the Fire Service and the State Fire Marshal. Tanya Hoover, our State Fire Marshal, is great to work with, and I think it's about time we maybe go to the State Fire Marshal and ask, why do we need all of this space? We need every inch we can get for PV. New homes are about as fire safe as anything you can find in the U.S. So with that, we could use some help. And that kind of concludes my comments.
Thank you. That was great. Next up, we have Shannon Casey, and she's going to be talking to us about her work down in San Diego.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me, and thank you for staying for the last session of the day. For those of you who aren't familiar, Cleantech San Diego is a business association. We were formed in 2007 to accelerate clean technology innovations that benefit our region's economy and the environment. And as I'm talking about San Diego, I'm going to be talking about the entire region, including the Imperial Valley, San Diego County, so not just San Diego as a city. In 8 years since our founding, we now have 115 private, public, and academic member organizations from across the greater San Diego region supporting our mission to advance San Diego's leadership in the clean tech economy. And the industry is definitely growing. The San Diego region's total count of clean tech companies when our organization began was 125, and today we count over 800 clean tech companies in our region. So my job is communications director, so you're going to have to bear with me as I brag a little bit about our region. And I'll share just a few more points to give you a flavor for our industry. This year, San Diego was named the #4 metro region in the nation for clean tech leadership. We're #1 in the nation for solar installations per capita. We have more than 16,000 electric vehicles on the road with 900 public charging stations in 350 locations, as well as 44 DC fast chargers, and we get updates on those numbers every month from SDG&E, and love to brag about how those are growing. Additionally, San Diego is home to the nation's top programs in algae biofuel research, as well as top companies working to commercialize biorenewables. And collaboration has clearly been an overarching theme in today's discussions, and San Diego is no exception. Collaboration is a huge part of our success story, and we like to say that San Diego is unique in that we're small enough to get things done, and also large enough to make a difference and have interesting results. So in San Diego, we feel really fortunate to have access to progressive municipalities and universities, a really strong military presence, and a forward-thinking utility, and all of these groups working together are committed to advancing clean tech innovations, which makes a really big difference for our activities. And of course, we're grateful that the California leadership has set clear goals for our state that definitely help drive the clean tech market in our region. So another number we're proud of, thanks to Prop 39, is our funding approvals for energy efficiency projects in K-12 schools. To date, the San Diego region is one of the top funded counties in California with 13% of the dollars statewide. So that boils down to $32.4 million being granted to San Diego schools so far, for a total of 14 million kilowatt hours of annual energy savings and $3 million in cost savings. So we're excited to watch those numbers grow, and we're going to keep reporting those numbers for the San Diego region. So in this case, San Diego's strong performance statewide was thanks to a joint effort by San Diego Gas and Electric and Cleantech San Diego to help streamline the process for the schools going through the application process, and to collaborate in a monthly meeting with working groups where these schools are able to test new technologies, try different lighting in the classroom, share those results with others so that we can all be on the same page and picking the right things without a lot of wasted time. So across San Diego, we're excited to see a number of projects that demonstrate our vision, including some that fall under the category of Smart Cities San Diego, which is a real exciting movement we're seeing right now. So Smart Cities San Diego is a collaborative initiative that we've put together between General Electric, City of San Diego, UC San Diego, Cleantech San Diego, and SDG&E. And this group meets every other month. We work together to try to identify projects that can fall under that general Smart Cities brand. And so we're tapping technologies from private companies in order to transform our region's energy use. So, and let me just say that Cleantech San Diego's role in these projects is to go ahead and try to find the organizations and the people that are ready to play in the smart cities space, and to connect them with the service providers who can help meet those sustainability goals. And then we try to just get things moving as fast as possible between private and public. So with my short time today, I wanted to finish by telling you about an exciting Smart Cities Smart Port project happening right now at the Port of San Diego. And I'll begin by saying that Michelle White is in the audience, who knows all the details about this, but I'm going to give an overview, and if you're interested, I would encourage you to talk to Michelle. But first, the Port of San Diego was prime for a Smart Cities project for a lot of reasons. They were one of the first ports in the nation to adopt a climate action plan. They have clearly defined goals for lowering the greenhouse gas emissions. They have a desire to lead by example with regard to sustainability. And they also have hundreds of tenants on their port-owned land, including large hotels, large restaurants, commercial operations that we hope may find this of interest and follow suit. So last year, the Port of San Diego became the site of a Smart Cities project deploying Internet of Things technologies, which in this case means smart sensors were installed to collect data from the HVAC system in the port's admin building. So in just the one building is where we started, and the system was installed non-disruptively, so it was on top of the existing infrastructure and involved a number of service providers from the private sector. And so I'll just run through those real quickly so you get an idea of the ecosystem of folks involved in this. So Intel provided the sensors, Dell runs the operating system or platform, OSI Soft stores that data in the cloud. Black & Veatch then takes that software and turns it into a easy-to-read dashboard for building operators. And then in addition, SDG&E smart meters are in the mix so that there's two-way communication between the building and the utility. So in this case, data's been flowing through the new system continuously since October 2014, and it was not long before actionable data was discovered by the building operators thanks to these sensors. So early in the pilot, Thanksgiving weekend, so this started in October, so by Thanksgiving weekend, something was found. To be exact, they could tell that over holidays, the HVAC system wasn't reducing as much as it could. It wasn't even as low as it is on weekends. So they were realizing that, okay, on holidays, we could do more. And that can be replicated all throughout the year on these 3-day weekends and things. And I think I'm right in saying that that's about a $5,000 a year savings for the port. And you can decide if that's a big deal or not, but it's proof that the data can equal savings. And so the point is here, and you all know this well, you can't manage what you can't measure. We absolutely have the technologies available today to do better with regard to energy management and cost savings, even in old buildings, where you may have to work with what you have. And in the case of the port, fun fact, Michelle was reminding me that their building was built in the 40s as a bomb shelter. Wow. So if they can do this and they can see results, that says a lot, and it's exciting. So I'll just end this story by saying that at this point, the port has moved into phase 2 of this project. They're now conducting a needs assessment into 4 additional buildings of theirs, taking a deep dive to figure out what the energy profile is and what smart building Internet of Things solutions can come in and help them out with a variety of things, maybe even beyond HVAC, maybe looking at water, other sorts of things that are completely in the world of the possible. So stay tuned for news of that project's expansion. They're going to be reporting back about that assessment in the fall to their Board of Commissioners, and they've had great contact with their leadership throughout this whole process. It's another theme I heard today, that it's really important to get your stakeholders involved early on, so I think that's been a success story. So clearly the Port Smart City efforts are exciting right now, but we're seeing a lot of general movement in this space. I just want to say the city of Chula Vista in San Diego is another great example of a municipality with a strong climate action plan, goals for being a leader in the smart city movement, and especially around their new Bayfront master plan, where the city, in collaboration with the port, is pursuing tremendous opportunities for sustainability solutions, and where Cleantech San Diego is playing a role facilitating those conversations. So to end, from Cleantech San Diego's perspective, the outlook is very good. We see our stakeholders rethinking energy, putting clean tech solutions to work for their businesses, and we also see the nation and the world taking notice and wanting to learn more. So things are good.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Shannon. That was great. I feel very encouraged right now. All right, last but certainly not least is Diane Grunich, and she's going to be sharing some very interesting things, I think.
Well, I was told the main thing is I have to be like the cheerleader so that everybody, walks out happy and enjoys whatever's the rest of your time in Sacramento. So I'll just say that it is, thrilling to be here and see this because this is my first time.
I know.
But I had the great honor of being a commissioner with the California Public Utilities Commission for 6 years, 2005 through 2010. And when I was appointed, one of my dear, dear friends, Art Rosenfeld, the grandfather of energy efficiency, gave me some advice because he had been serving on the Energy Commission for a number of years. And he said, think about what you want to accomplish when you are in this wonderful position of being a commissioner. And he said, time will go by very quickly, and you really have a chance probably to make a difference only in 1 or 2 areas. I was appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger, and he chose my first area for me. He was very concerned that the state had not built transmission lines for a number of years, and he asked me to be the lead on that at the Public Utilities Commission for planning and permitting, and we did get 5 major transmission lines built in California, all of which are now the backbone for our large renewable energy projects that we're bringing online. Those, though, sometimes were the tough days when I'd be escorted out of meetings by the local sheriffs, because people may say they want renewable energy, but nobody really wants the transmission lines. I can say that, and those of you in local government certainly know if you've ever had them in your neighborhoods. But I then had the opportunity to become the lead commissioner in energy efficiency when Susan Kennedy went to become Governor Schwarzenegger's chief of staff. And that was my passion. And I remembered what Art said, which is really try to make a difference. And I was like, this is just so wonderful. You know, how could I have ever dreamed of it, that I would be the lead in the state that already had the best history ever on energy efficiency, was spending the most money, delivering the most results. And I had started in government 30 years before. I worked here in San Francisco. I was actually in the very first Jerry Brown administration. And I worked for 5 years at the California Energy Commission. And so I actually worked on the first round of Title 24 and the first round of appliance standards. And they were much simpler back then. But that gave me the taste for energy efficiency. And so when I had this honor of being the lead at the PUC, I started to think about, you know, what do we need? What would be really useful? And there's probably 4 things that I think ended up being very important. One was that we put in place shareholder incentives for the utilities, so that when they exceeded their energy efficiency goals that the PUC set, that the shareholders can actually make money. And that is paid for out of the savings that we occur because we're not building more expensive power plants. And there is also the flip side to that. If they fail in the goals, they will be penalized. But the good news is that that has never happened. And I think that really is very important to think about sort of that whole private sector aspect happening. The second thing was that I had the ability to go to Europe, I think it was in 2007, to just go and learn what Europe was doing on energy efficiency, and met with a number of policymakers and government officials in various countries. And some of you may have heard this story, but I was meeting with the people in charge of energy efficiency for the UK, the United Kingdom, on literally the day that they publicly released their plan for zero net energy in homes in Britain. And I got so excited about, wow, here's this concept called zero net energy. And their goal was that they would require it for new homes by 2025. So I came back and said, well, we can beat that. Let's make it 2020. And so it's an example of, there were probably many, many people here who were already deeply involved in this. I mean, I want to be clear that, you know, it wasn't like, oh, I came back with this idea, but I hadn't really thought about it. And I said, well, let's set that goal. Let's make it an aspiration to get to zero net energy for new homes by 2020, and then we have on the commercial side by 2030. And so you have to understand the thrill of hearing people took that seriously. I think if you had asked me then, would I have said, wow, we've just passed, and it's an extraordinary accomplishment of what the Energy Commission has done to really put in place these standards that are very much leading us in that direction, which isn't to say there aren't some very difficult issues to address. The third item was that I came up with this idea of we should have a plan of where we're going in energy efficiency. And I used the analogy of, okay, customers of the investor-owned utilities are spending about $1 billion a year on energy efficiency. Over 10 years, that's $10 billion. If this were a private company, I bet they'd probably have a plan of how that money should be used and where they're going. And we may be the government, but heck, I bet we could come up with a plan. And so we had wonderful support from the Energy Commission. We were able to engage with Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. And I don't think Kathy Fogel is here today. Is that right, Ralph? Probably because she's fearful if I'm here, but she was the wonderful project manager on it. And it's another one of those things, we got it adopted in, when was it? 2008, I think, is when it was adopted. It was endorsed by the governor, by CAR, by the Energy Commission. But if you had asked me in 2008 when it was adopted, would anybody still be talking about it? I would have said, nah, this was just a plan we put together. I myself, wrote much of it. But again, it's just so heartwarming to say, the belief that California has in energy efficiency is unparalleled, because it really was so many people who have taken that to heart and said, we're going to accomplish the goals and the vision that we set out in it. So the fourth item I wanted to talk about was local government. That I was at a meeting that I think Mary Nichols, head of CARB, had convened back before SB 375 was passed. So I'm not quite sure what year it was, but we were trying to think about, what could be done with local governments. And certainly I had some understanding of local governments, having, worked at the Energy Commission, and prior to my being a commissioner, I had a consulting practice and worked with local governments. But we had a couple of meetings where, the representatives from the cities were talking about they had real visions of where they wanted to go, but they oftentimes, as you know, don't have the resources. So I did some thinking about it and talked with a lot of people, and I thought, well, what if instead of each of the investor-owned utilities just on their own funding bits and pieces, we gathered together up enough funding that was paid for by the various utilities to fund a central person who would then reach out to the various local government organizations, basically being able to use the infrastructure that already existed with the local governments, but having more resources that then those associations could utilize to then get out to your own constituencies. And I'm really happy, that we put in a decision, got 5 votes, and it passed, and we called for having an annual meeting just like this. So I want to say that's one of the sort of thrills of being a policymaker, is you do these things and you wonder, will they ever really last? And being here today, they have, and I will say to my friends at the utilities, as I say in this area, as many areas, it better continue. I may not be a commissioner, but I will be watching out. But it's just great to see what's going on. So I'm going to talk quickly about what I'm now up to. I am at Stanford University. They came up with a title for me. I'm a senior research scholar. Whatever that might be. But it was, again, policymakers and the governor's office had asked me if I were able to get an appointment at Stanford University, could I spend some time thinking about the next level of energy efficiency? So now I feel like I'm in the kid in the candy store, I get to think about this. And so I'm going to just briefly describe some of the conclusions that I and others have reached. And I will say that I've had a number of meetings and discussions with Commissioner McAllister and the CEC and the PUC and Mary Nichols and Carb and the governor's office folks. And I think that we are generally moving in the same direction. So I look at this as it's complementary, especially to the AB 758 that the Energy Commission is doing. We have a draft report, and now we're in the process of finalizing it. Commissioner McAllister has very graciously offered to host a meeting here in Sacramento when we present it. So one way or another, we'll let you know. There's a journal out there called the Electricity Journal, and they've asked me to basically produce 3 articles this year that will describe it, and they just accepted yesterday my first one. So, and then we'll probably have it available on various websites through Stanford. But it's sitting back, and you can think about, we have 2 wedges on energy efficiency. We have a wedge like this, which is our current goals before the governor announced our new goals. And that consists basically of everything we think we can do, being this great state on energy efficiency for codes and standards and for customer-funded utility programs. So it's not like we said, oh, well, we could do all this stuff, but our goals are only going to be down here. It is, and especially you heard with where we're going on the standards. I mean, they're really moving ahead. So it's already a huge challenge. That's the wedge that sort of everything is now working through. And I have great confidence that we are going to be able to accomplish it because we do know how to do efficiency. But then Governor Brown said, well, I've taken a look at where we need to go for climate reasons, and guess what? That is not the trajectory that we need to get to. We need to double what we're doing, basically, and that's where we have the second goal. You can think of it, it's literally a wedge on top of our first goal, and you can also think about what it's telling us is that it's not by 2030 we get to having twice as much as we're going to do. It's that each and every year we're going to be accomplishing as much as we plan to do, like this year, next year, the year after. So the first part of the paper I basically have 3 ways that I thought about this project. The first is the challenges in the next level of energy efficiency. I call the project the next level of energy efficiency. So the first one is the challenges. The second one is the new tools and opportunities. And then the third area is revamping our policy framework. So the challenges, there's basically 5 challenges that we collectively have. The first is that the magnitude of savings have to increase. And in the paper, what I've done is there's been excellent modeling work on, in order to achieve our greenhouse gas emission reduction goals for 2050, what does that mean as sort of the wedge for energy efficiency? And Ken and Alex talked about, it means a lot. And all of the modeling that has been done has shown that you absolutely need to do energy efficiency, not just to reduce emissions, because if our buildings are using less energy, we will not be producing as many emissions from whatever remains of the fossil-fired generation, but it's incredibly important for cost mitigation. And that over time, that actually becomes more and more the role of energy efficiency. Because if we don't do it, then we're going to be building a whole lot more renewables. And while renewables don't have emissions, they are not no cost. It costs money to put this in place. It costs money to build out those distribution systems. So there's a whole role of energy efficiency on the cost reduction side that goes far beyond the way we've thought of it. So the first one is the scope has to increase. The second part is the diversity of savings have to increase. That historically, not just in California, but around the country, the world, we've really focused on lighting, and we have made inroads on savings in other areas, but lighting has been our main tool. And And you've heard today, the Energy Commission actually has a workshop going on this afternoon about plug loads. They are just off the chart of what's happening with the increases in usage in building. And a plug load is not lighting. So we really have to look at the whole diversity of where we're getting our savings from. The third is persistence of savings, that measuring and knowing persistence of savings has to become commonplace. That we really have had a system where you can get a rebate or you can have a program that says, let's put in an efficient light, let's do whatever we're going to do, and then our job is done. And I'm being a little simple, but that's sort of the way it's been. When you think about getting these savings and when you think about carbon emission reductions, you want those savings to last and you want to know that they are there. And so it's really putting an emphasis in this area. And as a preview to the paper about the new tools, one of the great tools that we have now is with interval meter data and software analytics, we can actually know what's going on in a building. We don't need to have sort of this black box of engineering assumptions. And that's a whole nother level, again, that we have to move to. The fourth area is integration with our carbon and climate efforts. And because we have a climate change law in California, AB 32, we have some integration, but when I looked at it, I'm convinced it's not enough, that we've had the world of energy efficiency develop in its silo, and we have the world of all of our climate over here. The good news is all the policymakers and agencies get along, but it isn't as well integrated as it really, really needs to be. And then the fifth area, which I'm very excited about because it turns out there's not been much work on this, is the role of energy efficiency in our changing electric grid at both the transmission and distribution side. And there's two aspects of this. One is being able to use energy efficiency to avoid or defer transmission and distribution investments, and primarily at the distribution level. So all of the investor-owned utilities are doing pilots to see if you put an intense level of focus on energy efficiency around a specific feeder network, that you know is growing in load, can you avoid actually building that new substation or possibly even permanently avoid it? And interestingly, PG&E did a very well-known, well, not well-known, a very well-regarded effort in this area called the Delta Project about 20 years ago that did succeed in deferring a substation for a number of years, but it's sort of like that then went away, even thinking about it. So I think it's very important that we really look at this. And again, with new tools that we have, we can really have a much better understanding of how targeted energy efficiency within buildings in an area could be used and provide value to that. The other aspect of this dealing with the grid is with a lot of renewable power, we have lots of intermittency. And if any of you have seen the CAISO's duck curve, where their analysis is that we're going to have big problems because we have areas of the day where our load goes down, and so we may have overgeneration of renewable, and then we have this very steep ramp up where our solar goes off in the afternoon or evening, and our loads come on, and what are we going to deal with this? So most of the discussion has been about demand response, storage, building some gas peakers, but some very interesting analysis has been done that energy efficiency, while it's not in real time that you're just going to run out and do something, but it does have different load saving curves. And some of the initial research that we've done at Stanford has looked at residential lighting, and because of its attributes of usage, it actually matches up quite well with addressing this duck curve issue. But it isn't something that has been well analyzed. It isn't something that is valued. But this is the type of research that I think is very interesting to be doing, because it will be telling us that and I think Commissioner McAllister said it this morning, not all energy efficiency is equal. That with this changing grid, there's a real role for energy efficiency to play, and that's one of the challenges to think about. How are we going to know enough about it, value it, and then actually deploy it? So let me then just give the preview of the other two areas. The second is on new tools and opportunities, and that's actually really exciting because we have a lot more we can do now than, say, 10 years ago. And so the research that I and others have been doing, we've got 4 areas. The first is intelligent efficiency, that you heard about the great work with using sensors and knowing what's going on in the buildings. We've invested billions in these smart meters. My joke is now we know why we used them, that they can tell us what's happening. And then we have software analytics, but we just have this whole area of intelligent efficiency that we're just beginning to understand how to use it. The second area is on behavioral interventions, and this goes beyond just the O-Power comparison of residential use, that there's a deep research body in the social sciences about why do people do things and how do you influence behavior. And remember, energy efficiency is basically dozens and hundreds of voluntary decisions, sort of day after day, slugging through the mud. That's what ends up with big energy efficiency. So really understanding much more how behavioral interventions can help, and then embedding them in our various activities and programs, and having a way where the academics who know this stuff work well with the people who are doing the activities. The fourth area is financing. You heard this morning, again, we're going great guns with financing. That's something we didn't have. And then the fourth area is localized energy efficiency, that I'm very, very excited and think it's just a wonderful area of how we can really dig deep on energy efficiency, especially with carbon actions to get the results we need to get. So I'll just end up now with the policy framework recommendations. I don't have time to go into them, so it's a teaser. There's 4 areas there. The first is on agency governance. We can't keep having sort of parallel activities. There needs to be very much integration. The second is tracking progress. I was surprised that it is extremely difficult to find information on actual results, not just forecasts of what our codes and standards are going to do, but what are they actually achieving. And so putting this all together, that's the wedge the governor is talking about. What are we doing with codes and standards? What are we doing with customer-funded programs? What are we doing in the private sector? And right now, nobody's in charge of seeing what the results are, and that has to change. The third area are on the CPUC policy rules, that we've got a lot of inefficient buildings, and this current practice where we only allow use of utility incentives for the above code improvements does not make sense with the governor's goals. We have to free ourselves up and say, you know what, it's money well spent. We are going to go into those buildings and we're going to clean them up.
Yeah.
And it's still a good use of ratepayer dollar. And we have to make sure we aren't double counting, and I get all that, but we have to do it. Climate's real, climate problems. And then the final area is that I'm looking at sort of the whole concept of pay for performance and energy efficiency PPAs. And this is where I'm thinking one aspect might be that that's how you can give better access to data. In other words, if you become a qualified bidder to participate in a utility-run energy efficiency pay-for-performance program, that you would actually get on a confidential basis knowledge of where to target your efficiency. And so I'll just close by saying that to me could be a wonderful way that local governments could actually get a stream of money where they made a commitment that we're going to work with our entire community to deliver energy efficiency efficiency savings. We're going to know that they're real because we're going to have real baseline monitoring of actual metered data, and we're going to monitor it over time. And then if we are able to bring in any of the other revenues from cap and trade or wherever, to say this is a program that's looking not just at energy, but overall carbon emission reductions, I think that's the sort of thing that we really want to get into in a large scale. So that's a preview of what I'm up to. I'll just end by saying, you know, go out there, do great work. You're all leaders, and this stuff is only going to change if we make it happen. Thank you.
Now that was a finish. But I just want to thank this panel so much for coming out and giving us a very inspiring ending to this wonderful day. Thank you all so much. Please give them a round of applause. Okay, well, thank you all so much for coming. And I just want to give a really kind of a quick shout out to Julia and Christina and all the hard work that they put in to make this event happen for you all. You know, there's a tremendous amount of work that goes on behind the scenes. This forum, it takes 6 months of hard work with a lot of collaboration, a lot of conference calls, and a lot of meetings, and a lot of strategizing to figure out how to put one of these things on for your benefit and for all of our benefits here in California. And I just want to give them a round of applause because they certainly deserve it. Okay, great. Well, have a safe travels going home, and thank you all so much, and we'll see you again next year.